Plants. On Earth, they do all the same thing, kind of. In video games, though, they can fight, walk, some can even talk. But I'm not here to talk about sentient plants. I'll save that for another video. Today, I'm here to talk about Oxygen Not Included, a space colony simulator that is truly out of this world. Because in this universe, the world has already been blown up. Gone. It's no longer here. And you are struggling with your little colony made up of little people called duplicants, trying to stay alive and find out what happened. Maybe even escape the little spinning rock you're on. There were a lot of plants to begin with in the base game, and with one major DLC and 3 mini DLCs, the game has only managed to add even more over the years. Today, I'm going to rank all of them, from the smallest potted plant to the huge mega trees. Every single plant that has ever graced the game is going on this list. A couple of ground rules before we begin this. First off, mutant plants won't be counted towards rankings. Neither will any resource that takes more than 2 conversions to make. Oxygen Not Included runs off of cycles and conversions, which means one thing can be transformed into many others if you just put it through enough steps. So we're locking it to 2 conversions both before and after the plant growing itself to make this reasonable. We're also not exploiting any bugs in our analysis. We are only going to judge them based on what they are supposed to do. And finally, this is all my opinion. I am just a man, and while I might have a few hours in this game, there is no wrong way to play it. Unless all your dupes die, then you might have messed up a little bit. So without further ado, let's begin the tier list. Let's start off with the first plant people normally grow. Mealwood. It's the standard early game food. It takes only dirt to grow, has standard pressure and temperature tolerances, but has no mid or late game recipes. You can only pickle it so it lasts longer, but that doesn't make it taste any better. So it's going to be a solid C tier, the standard plant. Following that, we have the Bristle Blossom. It's the first better plant people can start growing. It takes water instead of dirt, needs light, and is more sensitive to temperature. But in exchange, you can use it until the late game for multiple recipes, and it takes a lot less labor than Mealwood if you pipe the water into the farms. It is the backbone of many bases I have built, and for its tireless service, I'm putting it into A tier. Following that, we have a plant that requires total darkness like Mealwood, the Dusk Cap. It takes slime to grow, has normal pressure and temperature ranges, but the recipes it can make are the same quality as the Bristle Blossom roughly, just requiring more exotic materials. So for that, and the fact that slime is a pain to manage, I'm actually going to put it in C tier next to Mealwood. Along with the Dusk Cap though, in the marsh biome you can also find Thimble Reeds, the first non-food item on our list. It takes 160 kilograms of polluted water, normal pressure, and a slightly higher than normal temperature range to make reed fiber. It is the only way to make reed fiber via plants, and one of the 3 ways to make it at all. It can also be planted by or grown in a room with pips to make a source of infinite dirt. And since it's so simple to grow besides that pesky 22-degree temperature minimum, I'm gonna put it in A tier for its usefulness. Moving out of the marsh biome and into the jungle biome, we're gonna see our first plant on our list that grows from the ceiling, Pincha Pepperplant. These little guys have a much higher temperature minimum and take 35 kilograms of polluted water and don't make food on their own. Instead, they're used to raise the quality of other foods like bristle blossoms. I'll be honest, I use them regularly to make stuffed berries, but they are genuinely one of the most finicky plants I use consistently. D tier. Before we move biomes again, there is another, more useful plant we can find in the jungle, the Balm Lily. It takes nothing. That's right, it has no fertilizer requirement. It just needs to be kept at the right temperature and in an atmosphere of chlorine, and it will grow and make balm lily flowers, which can be used for medicine. But the real trick is putting these plants with Drecos. They will eat the plant and make phosphorite for free, just like the pips with Thimble Reeds. So for that attribute alone, it belongs in A tier. Now we move on to my favorite non-DLC biome, the tundra. In here you will find our first utility plant, the Wheezewort. It takes in phosphorite, has a huge temperature window, and doesn't care about pressure. In exchange, it makes the area around it colder, making it the earliest and smallest form factor way in-game to reduce temperature. And combined with the Balm Lily to Phosphorite farm I just mentioned, you can get free infinite cooling with these bad boys. But they also have another advantage. In the Spaced Out DLC, they are the only plant that generates radiation, and they generate a lot of radiation, making them perfect for a cheap, controllable Radbolt generator. In most of my saves, I use this over uranium decay. It's that good. And for all these abilities, this is going to be our first S tier. We can also find a decent source of mid to late game food in the tundra, Sleet Wheat. It takes in water and dirt and has a pretty narrow temperature tolerance, but it can be used to make a huge variety of foods, including the best food, frost burgers. Considering the sheer amount of foods this thing can make, I would feel bad if I put it anywhere lower than B tier. Now, I guess we're gonna go from the best to the worst biome in my eyes. The rust biome is honestly a bit of a waste of space, and the Dasha Saltvine is a perfect example of this. It takes sand and chlorine just to make salt. And in almost every playthrough I've ever had, salt is always a material I have in huge amounts of surplus from saltwater sources. So this is a plant I pretty much never use, and it doesn't even make something useful. It's the first one that's going straight down into F tier. But don't worry, it isn't going to be lonely. Honestly, while we're at it, let's put some of the non-DLC decorative plants down there with it. Buffbriar, Buddy Bud, Mirthleaf, they're all pretty much useless. There are so many better decor options. The only one that is even mildly worth anything is the Jumping Joya, because it has a much better temperature tolerance. So D tier for it, and honestly it will probably be the only decorative plant not an F. Back to the rust biome, we still have one other plant, the Nosh Sprout. It takes in ethanol and dirt, requires an environment of pure CO2, and it makes notch beans, which can technically be made into a higher tier meal. But it requires farming Delectavoles or Pincha Peppernuts to do it. It can also be made into bracken with a plant pulverizer, so it's just barely gonna wiggle into C tier. Now, we're nearly through all of the non-DLC biomes, but there are 2 biomes in the base game with only one unique plant in them, so let's get those out of the way next. First off, the ocean biome, home to the Waterweed, a plant that grows in low quantities of salt water and takes bleach stone and more salt water fed to it to grow. The yields of lettuce are pretty decent, and it is another ingredient necessary to make frost burgers, making it a late game staple. Even if you have to ranch critters to make the bleach stone, I'm gonna put it in B tier for that alone. Now, the oily biome might not actually be a place where much grows, but the Sporechid doesn't care. Back in the day, this thing was a death sentence to any colony. The germs were nearly unkillable, and the punishment for sick dupes back then was far worse. Being a decorative plant, there is no way to cultivate Sporechids, and there is no real reason to. Now, I hear you all in the comments, Vince, you're ignoring the fact that you can use the zombie spores to make biobots. Well, I don't care. There are better ways to handle laboring in unsafe areas, like rovers, or even more sustainably, making the region safe to go through. So, this is gonna actually go double F tier, stupid flower. The final base game biome is the forest, my second favorite after the tundra, only because the tundra came first in game. Now, the 2 plants in this biome are arguably some of the best in the entire game. Firstly, we have the Arbor Tree. Similar to the Thimble Reed, it takes in polluted water, but it also takes in a bit of dirt, making it a great disposal for excess gray water from toilets. But it makes wood instead of fibers. Wood can be cycled into so many useful resources, dirt, water, and power to name the big ones, that it is a perfect resource sink. You can hoard huge amounts of it by just sending extra resources when you have them, and convert the logs into anything you need in 2 steps or less. Easy S tier. The only thing that beats an Arbor Tree, though, is an Oxyfern. Supply these bad boys with water and dirt, put them at the bottom of your base, and they'll convert all the CO2 from your dupes directly back into O2 for them to breathe again. Like the Wheezeworts, these things are so OP, the game won't let you propagate them for seeds. Instead, you have to find them or get them from the portal, but they are absolutely worth the work. S tier 2. Now, while we've covered all the plants that grow on the base game planet, there is one left before we get to the DLCs. Gasgrass. The food for the gassy moo, the late game critter. I'm going to say something that might upset some people. The gasgrass, and by extension the gassy moo, just aren't really worth it. Are they cool? Yes. But do you really need another source of natural gas? And one that takes away from space you could use for solar power especially? Really? Gasgrass takes a lot of dirt, liquid chlorine, and a very high light level, making them very resource intensive to grow. Not only do you need lots of dirt, but you're going to need a cooling system for making the liquid chlorine and keeping the farm cold enough that it doesn't try to boil out of the pipes. D tier, too hard, not enough payoff. There's so many better ways to make that end product too. And that is all the plants in the base game. Now, the script originally went on from here, but honestly, my editor is exhausted. So I'm gonna let him rest, and if you want to see me cover all the DLC plants, be sure to go down below and hit the buttons that tell YouTube I did a good job. Later.